Let's get started.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Tex Carter. I'm here along with my timekeeper, Jacob Williamson, and I want to welcome everybody tonight. We also want to thank the Calhoun County Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber Public Affairs Committee for hosting this event on behalf of the voting constituents for this position in government. We would like to thank each of you in attendance, as well as anyone watching online, for taking the time to review these candidates who have asked you to hire them to represent you in the interest of our community. This forum is being sponsored by the Calhoun County Chamber of Commerce and administered by the Public Affairs Committee of the Chamber. In consideration of time constraints, we know many of you have a favorite candidate. We ask that you would please hold all applause until the end of the forum. Audience and candidates are also asked to please put all electronic devices on silent or airplane mode. We ask that you please remain quiet in consideration for your fellow attendees and the candidates who have given of their time and treasure to be here tonight to answer and to listen to your questions. The questions tonight have been gathered by the Chamber from constituents of the candidates. A committee of the Public Affairs Committee vetted and determined the questions that are the most interesting and most pertinent to the constituency. Now I would like to read the rules for tonight's forum. The questions will begin from the audience's left to right, the candidate's right to left. Subsequent questions will be alternated between candidates so that everyone has an opportunity to answer a question first. The questions will be read once to all candidates. Subsequent candidates should make notes of the questions and be prepared to answer. To ensure that the most time for the audience to hear the candidate's thoughts, we ask that the candidates please refrain from asking to repeat a question unless it's absolutely necessary. The candidates will be given 2 minutes each to answer a question. A warning time of 30 seconds will be given. Jacob will take care of that. Upon expiration of the time, as moderator, I'll interrupt you nicely and thank you for your response and then immediately move to the next candidate, no exceptions. If an opposing candidate mentions another candidate by name, at the moderator's discretion, if it's in my opinion that it is more of a challenge of a position, this rule will not apply. However, if it's a challenge of another candidate, then a 1-minute rebuttal will be given to that candidate. Any interruption made by a candidate when another candidate is on the clock answering a question, the candidate interrupting will be given a warning, and upon a second time will be asked to leave the forum. The candidates will be given 3 minutes for a closing statement at the end of the questions, at the end of the question portion of our forum, with a warning of 30 seconds remaining by the signal. Upon the expiration of the 3-minute signal, the stop signal will be given, and then I will interrupt you nicely and thank you for your statement and immediately move to the next candidate, no exceptions. Again, thanks to everyone for being here tonight, and let's have an enjoyable evening. At this time, I would like to introduce you to our candidates for tonight's forum. In seat 1 is Shirley Millwood, attorney, Alexandria, Alabama. In seat 2, John Garlick, a counselor from Anniston, Alabama. And in seat 3, Julie Borelli, attorney from Anniston, Alabama. And now we will start with the questions. First question will go to Shirley. The probate judge position has been long referred to as the people's judge. Because of the probate judge, they're intertwined into everyone's life in some fashion. What qualifications do you bring to the position, from education to experience, that is most important to the citizens of Calhoun County to consider you the most qualified for their next probate judge?
Thank you for that question. I've been practicing law for 15 years. I've been in the legal field for 26 years. Over the years, I've worked as a team player. I've worked as a team leader, both professionally and personally. Both professionally as representing clients, advocating, being their voice in the courtroom, and also personally as working as a team player in the community and bringing our communities together and bridging the gaps. I have always worked well with the community and have presented myself as a leader. I have a master's degree, I have a Juris Doctorate, and of course an associate's in bachelor's in business administration. So I have 2 business degrees, 2 criminal justice degrees, and I also have a Juris Doctorate. And I was born and raised here, and I've been here my entire life, and I've just always been here and available to the community when there's a need. years.
Thank you. John?
My education, training, and experience span the gambit from accounting, finance, law enforcement, and mental health. I have a bachelor's of science degree in accounting and finance, a master's of science in counseling and education, specialist degree in counseling. I am a licensed professional counselor. I was CFO, Chief Financial Officer at Lee Brass here and at the McWayne Science Center for their first year of operation. I got my master's degree and went to work for Family Links, which was kind of under the auspices of the Sheriff's Office. I was a counselor there for at-risk kids teaching parent classes, and became a reserve deputy. The Sheriff Anderson, put me in charge of the jail, and then in 2007, Alice Martin, our current probate judge, appointed me the very first mental health officer for the county. Under that appointment, I had the authority to take people off the street who were in a mental health crisis and have them held in the hospital for 72 hours, and follow up with commitments, petitions for commitments. I've done hundreds of those. And then I retired in 2019 from the Sheriff's Office as Chief Deputy and went into private practice as a licensed counselor and adjunct teacher at JSU. So my experience runs that whole gambit. I have executive level experience both in the public and private sector. I've supervised civil service employees, managed companies with $50 million in budget and over 600 employees, and I'm familiar with all of that process management and all that. I hope to continue to be an advocate for the mentally ill here in the county, and will work toward improving the access to care and improved treatment. Thank you.
Jude?
So my education experience is a little bit different. I started out as a United States Marine. I was in the Marine Corps until I retired in 2013. While I was in the Marine Corps, I was able to complete my bachelor's in social science, my master's in human resources management and organizational development. After that, after I retired, I was able to do some different things, which is I was a finance director for the city of Anniston, and I also went back to school. I got my master's in forensic psychology, and I got my Juris Doctorate at law while I was working full time. The probate court is different. The probate court, you're not talking about someone that's just taking a judgeship. You're not talking about someone that just sits on a bench and makes court decisions. The probate court is split. You have the court side, but you also have the administrative side. The administrative side is just as important. So on the courtroom side, I am an attorney, and I'm also guardian ad litem. On the admin side, I'm also very familiar with government administration, records keeping, all the different things that are administrative, because my role in the Marine Corps was administrative. I think that managing people is also something that's important, because the probate office there's quite a few people that work there, and I also have pretty extensive management experience. So when you really put the education, the experience, and just demeanor with people all together, I do believe that I'd be the best fit for this role and would serve people of Calhoun County well.
Our second question, the probate judge is the chief election officer for the county, certifying all state and county elections. Security of elections has been a major concern over the last few years. We have a very good system in Calhoun County at present, but everything can stand to look to improve the system. The question is, what ideas and suggestions do you have to improve the integrity of elections in Calhoun County, if any?
So our elections here in Calhoun County are very secure. We have self-contained with black boxes in all of our polling machines, and I don't think they can get hacked. Now, I'm not a tech guy. I'm sure somebody might be able to hack that, but I doubt it. The controls that are in place, those little black boxes go back to the Sheriff's Office. We have an inventory of all of the individual paper ballots, so we account for the ballots and we make sure that those same ballots have gone through the black box. And of course, we hang on to those paper ballots in case we have to perform an audit or have to do a whole recall. I think we're fairly secure. We're very lucky in this state to be able to have a secure election. I think our biggest risk, if I've got time to talk about the biggest risk, would be the absentee or write-in ballots. The absentee ballots have the potential to be abused. People could knock on a door of somebody who has no intention of voting and say, hey, here's a paper ballot. We'd like to have you vote as absentee, sign here. And I think we need to be cautious of that. We know how many absentee ballots we have. It's a separate precinct in our accounting process. And if necessary, we can validate that. And make sure everything's safe. But I believe in our elections, and I think it's important that as a general public that we do not lose faith in our voting process. If we lose faith in the election process and people stop voting, the republic is dead. Thank you.
I'll piggyback a little bit off what John said. I do believe that we have a pretty good system going on. We have voting boxes. They're very secure. I wouldn't necessarily do anything different, but I would keep doing what I can to ensure that we don't start doing different things, like dropping off ballots, like allowing people to vote electronically, like allowing people to get mass ballots. I think that as long as we follow the procedures that we have in place here, it's really not that much of a problem. But I do think we always have to be vigilant, we always have to pay attention, and we have to look at what's going on around us to make sure that that does not happen.
The Alabama Code section dictates the process that the probate judge is required to follow in order to ensure the safety and the security of our election process. There is a very detailed code section, and by being the probate judge, I would obviously read that code section and apply the law. That law comes from our legislators, it comes from Court of Civil Appeals, Alabama Supreme Court, in rulings and opinions. So I would always ensure that I follow the law. I would always ensure that the process is followed as it's required to be followed. And I also will follow the bills that are being introduced in the legislature when legislation is in session, to follow those bills and track those bills and ensure that it's going to maintain the security and the integrity of our election system here in the county. And if there's a bill introduced that would jeopardize the security of our elections here in Calhoun County, then I obviously would rally together and ask you all, as people, as citizens of our county, to rally together to get behind us to prevent that bill from being passed in the legislature into Montgomery and becoming a law. And that's how we maintain the security of the election process in Calhoun County.
This is a B question on this same line. What knowledge or experience do you have of election laws and enforcement? And you may have already said this.
Who is that for?
Let's go ahead, since this was really a same part of that question, let's go ahead and keep it.
It has to do with elections.
I should have read it
What
together.
experience do I have? So, I was with the sheriff's office for 18 years, and the sheriff's office is in charge of securing the precincts, the polling places, and in making sure that when the ballots are delivered to the sheriff's office, that they are controlled and accounted for and stored properly. So I am very familiar with the problem solving that goes on in the precincts. I have on occasion helped Judge Martin do a little bit of problem solving here and there. The interesting fact for law enforcement is all of those precincts, the only law enforcement that can respond to a law enforcement issue, a crime, is the sheriff's office. Regardless of what municipality you're in, the sheriff's office is the only law enforcement allowed to go into a precinct and deal with a problem. So I did that for 18 years, coordinated all of those ballots coming back in, and very familiar with the process from start to finish.
Can you repeat the question?
I can't. What knowledge or experience do you have of election law and enforcement?
Okay. Well, as most probably know, this is not my first time running for office. So when I ran before, that's one of the things I had to do. I wasn't that knowledgeable about all the details at the time, but I had to make myself knowledgeable because it's important that we do understand everything that's in place, the way the ballots are cast, the way they're brought in. And one of the things that I did is I watched the process. So I went and watched as ballots were counted. Also, as the finance director for the city, we were involved in the elections as far as there were boxes that the city would put out or would go make sure that the doors were open, and they would bring those in. So I got to watch that process as well. But in general, just being aware of what the laws are, reading about it, making myself, teaching myself by ensuring that I was up to date on the most recent laws. That's my experience with the election process.
As the probate judge is the chief election officer in Calhoun County, and by law is required to work with our sheriff, which is currently Sheriff Maggie Wade, is also required to work with our circuit clerk, which is currently Ms. Kim Carson. The three of them work together to handle, to preside over the elections in Calhoun County. And everything is also reported to the Secretary of State. There are a lot of requirements, and I can't read those word for word without looking at the code section, but I have looked at the code section, I've read the code section, I've studied it, and in fact, I have it on my printed material that's out in the hall. I also have read multiple opinions from the Attorney General's office addressing campaign laws, and when individuals have sought opinions from the AG's office regarding elections. I have worked on many campaigns, beginning with Mike Rogers' campaign back in the early 2000s, the first time that he ran to become elected as our U.S. Congressman. And that was probably the first campaign that I worked on. And I've continued working on campaigns for more than 20 years since then.
Okay, next question. Most people have experience relying on the probate judge with an actual probate of a will or estate. What experience do you have in this field, and what experience do you think is needed for this very important duty? Julie?
One of the things that I do as an attorney is I do handle probating estates. I haven't been doing that all that long, but it is a process that you can quickly learn. You have a lot of people that will help you. I have read the probate judge's manual. I've read step by step what you're supposed to do when you're probating those wills, and I have done it myself. And then, let's see. So really, I think that what's important is that you follow the code, which you have to do, and you can't stray from that. That's in writing. It's easy to find, and it really, if you just are planning on following law, it's easy to follow. And the other thing is, let's see, I can't remember the second part of the question. I guess that's it.
Experience.
The experience is just working in the probate court and filing those petitions and filing for wills, filing for people's estates.
As a practicing lawyer, I have handled thousands of estate administration cases in the probate court of Calhoun County, as well as surrounding counties. Prior to becoming licensed in practice law, I started working for lawyers back in 1997. I worked for lawyers full-time during the day. I went to law school at night. During that time, I helped prepare cases prepare petitions and the other necessary paperwork to get those down to the probate office to be recorded or to be filed in, follow the procedure as far as getting waivers, consents, providing the wills, the death certificates, providing proposed orders and other things that are needed, ensuring that publication, when cases need to be sent for publication, all of estate administration cases have to be sent out for notice of creditors to be published. But there are other times, there's a lot of other nuances. Each case is different, each fact of each case can be different. And so as a general rule, we file a petition and then we follow that process. And that process is spelled out in the Alabama Code section and requires what we're required to do. We also pull rules from the Alabama Rules of Civil Procedure for service process and other things of that. But so for 26 years, I've been in the legal field, and I have been working in the probate court regarding estate administrations, whether someone died intestate or whether they died with a will. And I have, in my practice and as a paralegal, I have prepared thousands and thousands of wills. And so I'm very familiar with the process. I'm very familiar with what's required to be done.
So, of course, I'm not an attorney, so I haven't been on the attorney side of this, nor have I been on the probate judge side of this. But I have dealt with wills and estates and trusts. And as was stated, the probate law is pretty cookbook. You can read and interpret and apply the code. You can fairly easily process your way through probating a will or an estate. It's very important that you have a will so that you don't have to have too many complications with it. If you die without a will, it becomes very complicated. But there are ways to handle that. It's all in the code. And however, if it becomes very, very complicated, if there's contestants going on, you have family members arguing with each other, then it usually ends up that the lawyers will petition to rise that to a higher court, the circuit court. So in probate court, we process those wills. We make sure everything happens. We appoint We do letters of testamentary to make sure that the executor is properly appointed. And if you die intestate without a will, then we appoint an administrator to handle those things. And then the probate judge makes sure that they process that as is intended. But just to say, if you don't have a will, get one. And if you have any property of value that you want to make sure goes to an individual person, you might want to consider creating a trust. There's an irrevocable and revocable trust. Irrevocable would be best, but you'll need to talk to an attorney to do that.
Okay. Approving and supervising guardianships and conservatorships, involuntary commitments, and adoptions. These are key duties of the probate judge, and this often involves difficult judgments weighing conflicting interests and concerns that are at the heart of family structure. What experience and/or education do you have that would prepare you to perform this duty fairly and effectively?
Again, as I've said already, I've been in the legal field for 26 years. This is something that I've handled. It's a redundant thing, and it's something that I've handled thousands of times. In fact, I currently, at this moment, have multiple guardianship and conservatorship cases pending before our probate judge. I've had that we're still working on. Back in 2009, when I first started practicing law, I served as the guardian ad litem for respondents who are the persons who's alleged to be mentally ill and a threat to himself or to others, and is in need of and is not able to make their own decisions, and is in need of someone else to make decisions for them. I have been involved in this process for so long, I almost can sit here and recite the code section as far as the process that's required to make this happen. I have been also, in addition to handling probate courts, I have been a family law lawyer for many years. I have handled divorce and custody cases. I represented children, I represented elderly, I represented people from all walks of life. I have gone into some very complex situations, some not as complex, and I've had to be that person's voice. I've had to be that person that calms those people, because when something tragic happens in your life and something completely disrupts your life and it was unexpected, you've got to have a calmness. And I've been that calmness. I've been that person that has talked with our people and helped to bring some peace into their life and to give them hope and let them know that we're going to get through this process.
So this is one of those areas where all of my experience comes into play. So guardians, people you assign to protect the body of the individual conservator, somebody you assign to protect their finance. So, and then the commitments for those with mental illness. So as an accountant, as a counselor, as a crisis intervention professional, I can evaluate what those tasks are required for a guardian or a conservator and make sure that those people have those skill sets, in addition to the law very, very eloquently lists who can and can't be guardians and conservators. But I can make sure that they have the necessary skills to perform those duties. As the crisis intervention specialist and the first mental health officer, I had to do a lot of commitments. I did 72-hour holds, but I also did commitments for any law enforcement agency in the county on call 24/7. I dealt with people that were suicidal. I talked to them on the phone, through the door, and in person, and was able to get them a hospital bed when needed. When available, really when available. And I know how to deal with people that are in crisis. I know how to de-escalate. I teach that at the law enforcement academies. De-escalation skills, active listening skills. So I think all of that experience plays into when you're evaluating who can be a guardian, who can be a conservator, and the commitment process is very, very important. I could go on for way more than 30 seconds and tell you what to do in the mental health system, but thank you.
Most of my practice right now does fall under the family law cases. And family law, I'm also a guardian ad litem. For anyone that doesn't know what a guardian ad litem is, a guardian ad litem is an attorney who represents someone that maybe can't speak for themselves. So it could be a child, it could be an adult who they're trying to decide whether they're mentally competent or not. The guardian ad litem is a little different because if I'm your attorney, for the most part, I'm gonna have to do what you want me to do. A guardian ad litem has to do what's in that person's best interest. And that may not always be what they want. So some of my experience stems from the fact that I am a guardian ad litem. I have represented children. I have represented people who are facing possible commitment. And all of that helps prepare me for this. As far as some of the rest of it, let's see, adoptions, I have done several adoptions. I have several adoptions pending in the probate court right now. I have an adoption that I'm personally involved in that's mine, that I'm involved in right now. So I have experience there as well. And as far as guardianships and conservatorships, one of the main things you have to do, just like some of the other things we talked about, is you have to follow the code. It is written in the code. And I think it's important that you try not to stray from the code. I think the hardest part of that is going to be decide, you have to listen to both sides. You have to listen to all sides. And you have to make the best decision you can. But you also have to do it while you follow the law and while you follow exactly what the code says you have to do. So that's my experience with this process. Thank you.
Management of deeds and records, both physically and digitally, is a huge responsibility of the probate judge. What experience do you have that qualifies you to perform this duty, and how knowledgeable are you of the process?
Sounds to me.
That's you, John.
Well, I have been an accountant, and we do filing and recording, and that's kind of what we do. The probate office does collect and file and record and make public record almost any document you want to put in there. If you want to file a piece of paper that says you're not a pink elephant, you can go to the probate judge and pay a fee, and it becomes a matter of public record. All of the code itself talks about how these records have to be maintained and filed and recorded so that when they are public record, they are easily accessible. Some things like adoptions are not a matter, they're private, they're sealed and can't be in the public record. Improving access to that, I think Judge Martin has created a very efficient machine down there, and we're certainly going to keep that going. Technology continues to improve, and I believe in continuous improvement. So we're going to be looking for ways to make the public information more accessible to the public, whether that's more access online, more availability in the office for computers, easier access. But again, in the code, there is a whole list of how you maintain those records. And it's pretty much, like I said, cookbook. You read it, make sure you comply with the law, and we're certainly going to do that.
Management of deeds and records, you're basically talking about just administration. And anytime you're talking about government administration, there are always going to be publications you have to follow. My past with the Marine Corps, I was an admin officer. So one of the things we had to do was follow federal publications. But federal publications and state publications are not all that different. They spell out what you have to do. And especially when you're talking about just the admin side, I'm not going to say it's simple because there's a lot to it, but it is written out how you're supposed to manage it. And it might be how you file. It might be what information to file, what to redact. It might be how long to keep these records before you destroy them. If you're going to destroy them, because you don't destroy all of them. So knowledge of those things, just the way that I've had to work with those have prepared me for this. With my role with the City of Anniston as finance director, we also had the same thing. We had to follow state level publications. The main thing you have to do when you're talking about administration is stay up to date on the publications, make sure that if there's any changes you're aware of, and again, follow them to the letter. Thank you.
Back in 1997, I began working for a lawyer in town, Mr. Hank Watson, and I had zero experience in the legal field. I was just a little young girl, shy and not knowing what I wanted to do with my life at that time, other than I knew I needed to raise my children. Went to work and I started filing papers in the file folders in the file cabinet. We had Rolodex index cards, and so this just goes back. Nowadays it's a lot, technology has come a long way since then, but I go all the way back to the DOS computers and the Rolodex index cards that we had on our computer. We just sit and spin a wheel, and they were alphabetized. So I've been way back in managing that, and that was what I started doing, was being a file clerk. And then, as a paralegal for the attorney that I worked for at the time, I would always have to organize their files, have to go to court and try a case. Even before I finished law school and passed the bar, I prepared one of the lawyers I was working for a jury trial. We went in the next week, tried the jury trial, got a favorable verdict. That's just something I've always done. It's something I know, and to me, it's second nature. I really don't have to think a whole lot of it. I was one of the very first to use the hour file system when it began some years ago. I can't even tell you how long ago that's been. A lot of us are old school. We don't like changes, but I like to be innovative when possible to make everyone's life more convenient. And so I was one of the first ones to jump on and start using the hour file system. And I use the electronic access system at the probate court that we currently have now, and I use that frequently.
There are fiduciary duties of management of public funds along with other assets. For this reason, a bond is required for the probate judge. The voters need to know and expect honesty that a candidate is qualified in this area. A quick check of public records can easily verify or dismiss any concerns. Is there any history in your experiences, financially or criminally, that would burden your ability to be bonded for this position? And if your answer is yes or no on the record, that's fine. That's all you need. Unless you feel like you needed to explain it. Yes.
So my previous job before an attorney again was the finance director for the city of Anniston. As the finance director, I had to be bonded. Prior to that, in the Marine Corps, one of the offices that fell underneath my charge was the dispersing office, which is our finance office in the Marine Corps. There's nothing that would stop me from being able to be bonded, because I've recently been so. And I do have a lot of experience in this area. I know when I was finance director for the city of Anniston, we went from having reserves of about 12% to having reserves of about 20%. I've never had an issue managing public funds. I'm conservative when it comes to how we spend those funds. I like to be very careful. I like to have a reserve, and I just want to make good financial sound decisions for organizations whenever I'm involved in the finances of those organizations.
So I've been a notary public since 1998, and to be a notary public, you have to provide a surety bond. I've also been licensed by the Alabama State Bar since April 2009. I had to apply for my license prior to, or when I started law school, I had to apply for a student license, and that is a very rigorous application. And we have an ongoing and continuous duty, as long as we maintain a license to practice law in the state of Alabama, we have an ongoing and continuous duty to consistently update the Alabama State Bar with any changes in our life. And so the State Bar, their process is very rigorous, and they look at everything. Anyway, I've been licensed since April 2009. Prior to that, when I got my license as a law student, and again, I'm ready to go to work.
So I too was a notary public for a little while and was bonded there. As an accountant, as a certified management accountant, we have to abide by generally accepted accounting principles and circuit codes and ethics. I am a licensed counselor and have had background checks in that capacity to work with DHR. Of course, I was in law enforcement and attended the FBI National Academy. There's a bit of a background check that goes on in there. We have, under my license as a professional counselor, we have to abide by a code of ethics with regard to that license. So and we also, there's a statement of economic position that we all have had to fill out with the state to be a candidate, but I've also had to fill that out. Every year I was in law enforcement working for the sheriff. When you get to a certain rank, you have to fill that out. So my statements of financial position are available to the internet for anybody who'd like to see that. Thank you.
This next one's a two-part question. Budget and human resources duties are an integral part of the success and survival of the probate office. What qualifications do you have to manage this office? And what is your history of preparing a budget or your history of managing professional people working through civil service and the board system?
That's me.
I think that's Shirley.
So, first of all, I founded my law firm back in October of 2009, Millwood Law Firm out in Alexandria. Most of you probably have seen it out there. That is where I continue to practice today. For more than 14 years, I've had my own law firm. I've had employees that worked with me. I don't manage employees. I work side by side with my employees. We work as a team. I'm a team leader when I need to be a team leader. Being an effective leader is teaching your other people to be able to do things better. And so I've always worked with a team and not coming in trying to boss people around and that sort of thing. So I have the experience, both personally and professionally, to work together as a team. And being a lawyer, and especially in a lot of cases we handle, it's teamwork. It is teamwork, and we have to come together as a team to make, especially in family law when we're trying to reunite families, it takes a team, a village to get behind these people to help them be successful. And I have been part of so many teams. Also, there's a chief clerk at the probate office, and which is Ms. Rita Hurt currently. And our chief clerk handles the writing of the checks and with the oversight of the probate judge. So that is not something that a probate judge is going to be handling alone without some accountability. And the chief clerk is not going to handle that alone without some accountability.
So throughout my business experience, I, of course, was CFO and Chief Financial Officer of Brass. We had 600 employees at the time when I started there. We brought it in and out of bankruptcy, reduced the employees to 430, and made it a profitable company. We had $50 million budget. At the sheriff's office, I was jail administrator. I prepared our budgets and supervised our jail employees, and of course, the chief deputy, I had the entire sheriff's office under my management. My management philosophy is to give my employees everything they need to get their job done. They know their job better than I do. So my job is to make sure they have the resources they need to get their job done. At the probate office, there are 8 employees. They're civil service employees, and the budget there is somewhere between $800,000 to $1 million a year. I have tremendous management experience, lots of employees. I know how to put a budget together, and I will continue to do that at the probate office. Thank you.
So this is probably where most of my experience comes in. As far as managing the budgets, again, finance director for the city of Anniston. We manage the budget. We have multiple budgets, but if you add them all up, you're talking about probably $60 million. And I was directly responsible for that budget. Before that, I didn't step straight into that. Before that, I was actually the CFO for Community Action Agency, which is a nonprofit. I managed a budget of $11 million in that organization. While I was in the Marine Corps, I was administration, which for the Marines, they don't have HR. So your S1, your administrator, is basically the equivalent of what your HR would be. In that capacity, in my last duty station, we had 2,500 Marines and sailors. We deployed. In that deployment, we were spread across 7 locations. So part of what we did, and part of what I did, and my staff did, is we had to know where each and every one of those people were at any time. We had to handle their pay, we had to handle their awards, we had to handle all their personnel records, and my staff and I are the ones that had to do that. So I did have staff that helped, I had a great staff that helped, but ultimately I was responsible. So if anything went wrong, it was me that had to be called to the carpet. So I do have extensive experience. Furthermore, I have one of my degrees, my master's is in human resources development, or human resources management and organizational development. So not only do I have the experience in human resources, but I also have the degree in human resources to back it up. So I do believe that I probably have the most experience in those areas. Those are areas that I feel very confident and very comfortable working and would be good for the probate office.
Since none of the candidates have ever been on the bench as a judge, would you please give to the audience your definition and explanation of ex parte communications?
That's me.
That's you, John.
So ex parte means on behalf of. Ex parte communications refers to those communications that the judge may have with people who are party to the case. It is very important that that judge not have conversations about the case that exclude certain members of that case. These are conversations that must be had with the entire party involved in the case. These are confidential conversations as well. as a licensed counselor, my whole business is surrounded by confidential data and conversations. So that's okay.
Ex parte communications, like John said, it's communications that are held with the judge or with someone that's basically one-sided. It's very important that that does not happen. That comes into play, especially in the probate office, when people want to come in and they want to talk to the judge. They want to talk to the probate judge. They want to talk to, I mean, it happens in district and circuit court as well. People just want to explain and they want the judge to listen to them. But it's very important that that does not happen because and one of the reasons is you don't want to have any bias with the judge. They can't listen to just one side. I can't go talk, even now, I can't go talk to a judge about a case without the other side being in there, without the other attorney being in there, because that's unfair. And that would be one-sided communication, and things may be said that wouldn't be fair to that case. And that's the reason it's done, is to keep things fair and to make sure that everyone has the same, has the same ability to represent their case. So you don't want any underhanded dealings, you don't want anything done backdoor, nothing like that. So that's what ex parte communication is at the basic level.
Ex parte communications is when one attorney or one party to a case goes and tries to have a conversation with a judge regarding a specific case. It is unethical. It can happen, and it's prohibited. There are ex parte motions that get filed with the court that the judge has to rule on, and those ex parte motions are one-sided motions, and the court has to have the motion and the affidavit and an attorney's affidavit in accordance with Rule 56 before the judge can rule upon that ex parte motion. Aside from that, there should be no ex parte communications with the court. If one attorney needs to speak with the judge, they need to reach out to the other attorney who is representing the other parties, and all of them should be present whenever they are discussing a specific case.
Okay. What immediate and what short-term changes do you intend to make to the office of probate judge upon installation into the office?
So immediate short-term changes, I wouldn't say I want to do anything immediately. I would want to get in the role, see how it's ran, see, talk to everyone in there and see what works and what doesn't work. I would eventually I do want to make it more user-friendly as far as the electronic filing systems, but that's not something immediate. As far as changes, I really wouldn't make immediate changes to the office. Again, I would get in there, talk to the people that are there, talk to the clerks, talk to the administrators, and get a feel for what they think, where they think improvements could be made, because they're really the ones that know everything that happens in that office. It's not me going in there as a brand new probate judge that knows everything. It's the people that are in there that do that work day in, day out, that really know what works and doesn't work. And I think that talking to them is going to be the best way to assess whether or not change needs to be made.
I am not setting out on a mission to change anything in the probate court other than put myself in the seat. I work in the probate court pretty frequently. I have had a good rapport with the employees there. We all work together as a team. There's probably nothing there that they're going to do that I won't do, or that I don't already know how to do. There are obviously ways they're going to teach me their ways of doing things because they have a tried and true method. But as far as asking them to do something that I wouldn't do that. Every day when I'm working with my staff, anything that I ask them to do, I will do it myself. And anyway, I'm in the probate court quite often. Judge Martin has a pretty efficient courtroom running there, and I just want to maintain the integrity of the courtroom as Judge Martin has ran it for the last 17 years, and I just want to continue to move forward.
Yeah, as was said, Judge Martin has a very efficient and well-run organization, so I really don't think there are any immediate or short-term changes that have to be made. We are in the people business. We are in the information business. It's very important that the information be accessible to the public when they come in. It's very important to me personally that when someone interacts with the probate office that they feel like they've been heard, and that even though we may not be able to answer their question for an abundance of reasons, that they walk away feeling like they've been heard and maybe they've got a referral to go someplace else. But like I said, the probate office is very efficient, runs very, very well. I'm going to interview each one of them, not interview like people, I'm going to talk to each one of them to get individual input privately and then in mass. And continuous improvement is good, but change for change's sake is bad. So we're going to look for ways to improve if we can. We're going to look at technology and see what we can do that to make information more easily accessible. And we're going to make sure that people that come into the probate office feel like they've been heard and listened.
Another two-part question. As a probate judge of Calhoun County, you're faced with a probate issue that you've never faced or are familiar with. Can you please explain your thoughts on resolving this issue, and where or who would you rely upon to assist you with this important issue? Shirley.
Gosh, I've been faced with a lot of complex situations over the last 26 years. A lot of questions that I didn't know the answers to, and I've had to go find the answers. In fact, I've handled a lot of complex cases for individuals that we always say, this is a bar exam question. And if you've ever sat for the state bar, you'll understand the complexity of that. Also, I've gone through a lot of things in my personal life that has also prepared me for that. And I have the ability to go and look and find the answers, whether I'm going to go look for, opinions from the Supreme Court, from the Court of Civil Appeals, whether I'm going to pick up the phone and call AOC and ask for an opinion from AOC, whether I'm going to call the Alabama State Bar and ask for an opinion from them, from the judicial branch or the judiciary branch in Montgomery. And I mean, there are resources available, and those are resources that I've tapped into for the last 26 years, trying to find answers. There are always going to be complex situations when you're dealing in the legal field, and especially presiding over as a judge, there's always going to be complex situations.
So yes, there's resources available. If you're in a position where you don't know the answer, then you do some research, find some resources, talk to the people that work at the probate office. Maybe they've run into that before, or have some outside counsel that you can tap into. But bottom line, research, problem solve. I'm going to make decisions, no matter how complicated they may be, that are within the law, that are rational and informed, but most importantly to me, compassionate. So I'm going to endeavor to do that and problem solve in a very compassionate way.
I think that first you have to research. You're going to look at your code section. You're going to look at any laws that may be around. You may look for legislative updates to see if there's anything new that's come out. Once you do that, I think that I would start with those nearest and dearest. I would start with the staff there in the office. I would ask them, some of them, what their thoughts are, or if they've seen anything of that. If I can't get anything there, then I'm going to go to other probate judges in other courts. Maybe they've experienced it already. Maybe they already have the answer, or maybe they can just point me in the direction of what I need to know to help me make an informed decision. I do think that is important, and that's where the relationships come in. You need to maintain the relationships, not just with your staff, but with those other judges in different counties or different areas. And you just lean on each other, and it takes a team. And I think when you use the whole team, you can always come up with an answer.
Would you explain your familiarity with the redaction process as it relates to court and to public records? Along with your answer, could you explain how the process works?
Well, the redaction process is in the code as well. There's certain things in the matter of public record that get redacted, like social security numbers, dates of birth, those kinds of things that can help identify somebody where they can be hacked, if you will, or get their identity stolen. That process is laid out in the code. The code very specifically lists what documents are filed as public record and what has to be redacted from that. It is a process. The staff at the probate office are very familiar with all of that process, and I believe that it will be pretty straightforward.
The redaction process is in the code, and it tells you what all, like John said, it tells you what all needs to be redacted. For sure, social security numbers and other personally identifiable information. It should be redacted, which, I mean, basically means marked out, but a little bit more eloquently than that. Before it's uploaded into any system, especially the system that can be viewed by the public. A lot of our records can be viewed by the public. The probate court does have a system where the records are viewed by the public. And if something were to get put in there when it should have been redacted, others can just file a motion, or they can ask that the court redact it and update it. I know that being an attorney, we do deal with Alicourt, and in Alicourt, there are often things that are filed that have information in it that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be filed, but it does happen. And when that happens, you file a motion and have the clerk will help you get the information redacted. But it is very important, and it has to be followed. It is in the code, and failure to do so just gives outsiders access to information they shouldn't have access to.
We're required to redact information that's public records. We redact all except for the last four of a person's social security number. More common, it's becoming, and it might have changed recently, but I know there's been talks about making it the last three of their social security number instead of their last four. Any other personal identifying information such as their date of birth that someone would be able to obtain that information and hack into their identity, that information is required to be redacted. When we are going on to our file to file a document with the court, there in bold red letters, it says, ensure that you have redacted your information before you upload these documents. Failure to do so is a misdemeanor offense, which means it is a criminal offense for your failure to redact those documents before you upload them into the electronic system.
Okay. Social media and web pages have become a major part of reaching people and conducting business. What changes in this area might improve the probate judge's office efficiency and your customer's experience?
Social media can help the customer's experience because it gets information out there in a way that people are used to getting it now. You can get information about the court out, what the hours are, what we're doing. You can get information out about the different electronic filing systems or like ways they can view public records. That's all fine. You do have to be careful when you're talking about social media because when you have a system like that, when you use social media, let's say Facebook, it also, oftentimes people will use that to communicate with the court. And if they do that, that could be considered ex parte communications. So while social media is a gift, and it is good at times, and it does help, and it helps get information out there, you have to be careful that it be used properly so that it doesn't cause any ethical issues and doesn't cause ex parte communications.
Can you repeat the question?
Let me get one. Give me a second. Social media and web pages have become a major part of reaching people and conducting business. What changes in those areas might improve the probate judge's office efficiency and your customer's experience?
So, the probate court currently has a website, and it's with Calhoun County's website, and it's calhouncounty.gov. You can go there and look at any of the Calhoun County organizations, one of those being the probate judge's office. And as new rules become effective, such as the new adoption code that became effective January 1 of this year, that information is posted on the probate judge's website regularly. I think social media can be used for notifying, of court closures, maybe some updates. I also think it's good to help provide information to the community for resources that are available that people may not know about. And so I think it's a great tool to be able to help with not only the probate court, but also other services that the community may benefit in that are available in the community that they may not otherwise be aware of.
So, yeah, social media, web pages, they're all designed really to push information out. From our side, I want to push information out. It is a terrible way to have communication, to be illegal, it's uncontrolled. So web pages and social media are great ways to push information out. On the web page, we could have forms that are necessary so that people can go online, print out, fill out. Some probate judges throughout the state have forms already out there. But really, as a rule, from my thinking, social media for the probate office, web pages for the probate office should be solely used to push information out, to provide resources for the public. We're in the people business. We want people to be able to feel like they're having a transparent interaction with the probate office. But again, it's gonna have to be a push out on social media. It can be a very dangerous environment. So one way, pushing out, has been my experience with that stuff, the sheriff's office.
Audience, I'd like to thank you for your attention. You've been very good, and at this time, you can applaud these candidates. Closing statements now.
Okay. I'm Shirley Millwood, and I have been in the legal field for 26 years. 14 and a half years ago, I opened my own practice in Millwood Law Firm at Alexander, where I continue to practice today. I was the first lawyer to open a practice in Millwood Law Firm, taking the chance on the unknown. I have a history of taking the chance on the unknown throughout my life, just overcoming a lot of adversities and obstacles in life, and having to figure out a different way to be able to maneuver through those and to overcome those and just really just bust through some brick walls and to continue pressing forward in a positive way. When I started working in the legal field, I was a single mother with 3 children. I went to law school at night. It took me almost 12 years to get my degree. That was because there were times I had to take off of work. I would take leave of absence from school to be able to take care of my children and run ball fields. I was involved at sack sheep activities when my children were young. I served on the board there. I served as a secretary. I served as a lead mom. I also pitched in and did whatever needed to be done. I've spent 9 years as a coach's wife. I know firsthand what it's like to be a team player, what it's like to make those sacrifices. I've been out boots on the grounds, the day after the tornadoes come through our areas. I'm out there with my hair up in a hat, my boots on, and I'm just as dirty as everybody else is, and that's something I really enjoy doing. I have 3 beautiful children. One is now in heaven, has been for more than 5 years. I have a blend of 10 grandchildren. And I've been here my whole entire life, and I've learned to overcome a lot of adversities that I think will benefit me, or I know will benefit me, serving the people of Calhoun County as your next probate judge. Thank you for your time.
So I think in the first question, I gave you the education, training, and experience speech. I've been in an entrepreneur for most of my life. I started at age 16 in my own diving and salvage company in a boatyard. I've had a photography business on the side. One of the most interesting businesses I ever had to deal with was a short-line railroad in Connecticut. I was one of 3 people who started a 34-mile stretch of short-line railroad. So we had to be familiar with the railroad regulations at the federal level. It was interesting. I've served on many boards, both for-profit and non-profit. Family Links, Success Academy, you should be familiar. Some of you are familiar with those organizations. I enjoy what I do. When I changed careers from accounting to counseling, I decided I really wanted to be where I could help people. When I got into counseling, I decided that the best place to help people is when they are in need, when they are in crisis. And that's why I went to work at the sheriff's office. I wanted to deal with people when they were in most need in crisis. I have talked people out of suicide. I have responded to some situations that I would not share with you. But I like the crisis work that we have at the sheriff's office. I teach crisis at JSU. I enjoy that. I enjoy working with people and helping them solve their problems. So I believe that my training, education, experience, that broad range of accounting all the way through law enforcement and mental health, budgets and finance, make me uniquely qualified to be your next probate judge. And I thank you for your time this evening.
So as a Marine, one of the things they instill in us and that they teach you from beginning to end is about service over self. In my last command, I led 65 Marines and sailors. We went on a deployment to the Middle East. And when we left for that deployment, it was the day before my son turned 1 year old. I missed his first birthday. I missed his first haircut. When I came back from deployment, he didn't know who I was. And he was scared of me. He didn't want me to touch him. And that was hard. That was very hard. And people asked me, how could you do that? How could you leave your children? How could you leave your family? And the answer is that I took an oath. I took an oath to my country. And when I took that position, I promised those Marines and sailors that when we did deploy, I would deploy with them, because that was my responsibility. Because service over self is not just about when it's easy. Service over self really means that you do that when it's hard, when things are hard. It's important that the person in this job take it just as seriously. The probate court is different. And Judge Martin would tell you, the probate court is more than just a court, it's a business. It is finance, it is human resources, it is reporting, it is all the administrative things. And I can sit up here and I can humbly tell you that I don't know it all. I do not know everything about being a probate judge, and nobody does until they are the probate judge, because there are so many things that are encompassed in that title. There's so many things you have to do. But what I can tell you is that I will learn from the judge that's in office. I will learn from the staff. I will listen to those people that have been there 10 plus years and that know their job back and forth. And I won't go in there the first day and pretend like I know everything, because I don't. But I will learn. I will learn. I have the education. I have the experience. I'm the most well-rounded person for this job with experience in all those areas. And I can tell you that I will absolutely take my oath to the county just as seriously as I took my oath to our country. My name is Julie Perella, and I ask that you consider electing me as your new Calhoun County Probate Judge.
And that concludes our forum. We want to thank the Calhoun County Chamber of Commerce and the Public Affairs Committee of the Chamber for sponsoring this event. We also want to thank the three candidates for giving us their time tonight so that you can learn more about them. And we also want to thank you, the audience, both here at the Civic Center at Oxford and those listening online, for taking time to become more informed about these candidates and their positions in the government. This position is one of the positions that most of us will have interaction with at some time in our lives. For those leaving the Civic Center, we ask you to drive safe, and we wish you all a good evening.